Go inside the
I'm sure there'll be a lot of hype about this game, but I just think everybody needs to chill out mentally, physically, and every other way for a few days, and then we'll have plenty of time to get ready for that game.
Yeah, that's right. You just heard Nick Saban say the words chill out, but you know he'll have a hard time doing that. LSU and Alabama meet in less than 2 weeks. It's an off week for the Tide, but not for us. Not ever. Tider Insider TV begins right now.
Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider Television. Alongside Rodney Orr from Tider Insider, I'm .com. I'm TiderInsider.com. I'm Gary Harris. GaryHarris.com hasn't started yet, but maybe I need to get one.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Hey, I tell you what. I can take a hint. A lot of people have been telling me I need to switch to Diet Pepsi from regular Pepsi. So tonight,
there you go.
Thanks to Buffalo Rock and the fact that Jenny Wallace had a birthday party earlier and I had a big piece of chocolate birthday cake. Yeah. So I don't need any more sugar. We go on Diet Pepsi tonight. But no ball game for Alabama this coming weekend, but that's okay, Ronnie, because we still got plenty to talk about. BCS conference expansion, all that's going on. But first, the big one. Number 1 LSU coming to number 2 Alabama in less than 2 weeks, and we begin to look at this game, and there is the breakdown, between the two teams, Rodney. First of all, let's start with Alabama. Where do you see the Crimson Tide having an advantage against LSU?
Well, first of all, Gary, I mean, you would have to look at where the game's played. I mean, it's played here in Tuscaloosa. If you don't have an advantage at home, then, that's a problem. But I think when you look at it, I think that would be the first place I would start.
No doubt, the home field advantage, you have to start there. Also, the fact you'd like to say that confidence is an advantage for Alabama. Both these teams are extremely confident. Still, though, the Crimson Tide is at home. And also, you could look at the revenge factor. Last year, Alabama was still in control of its own destiny. One conference loss, but if they'd have beaten LSU and Auburn, it wouldn't have mattered. They'd still gone to Atlanta, went to LSU and lost a tough ball game in the fourth quarter. That's got to be on their mind.
Well, and I think also, Alabama received a lot of criticism last year when you're talking about, even though they did go 10-3, an outstanding season, but they lost to LSU. They lost to Auburn. Those were big games, obviously. And they lost to South Carolina earlier. But when you look at that, Gary, Alabama maybe doesn't feel like it's won a big game in a while. Right. So this is a really big game, obviously, one of the biggest in SEC history, no doubt about it. I don't think there's ever been a number 1 and number 2 in the SEC that squared off in the regular season. And, so it's a monumental game. It's a historical game from that perspective. But, when you look at it again, Alabama can build off of last year from the standpoint of, hey, we haven't won a big game in a while.
Yeah. Both these teams are so talented, so evenly matched. If you're looking for an advantage for LSU, could it be, at least on paper, the kicking game?
Well, yeah, you could certainly do that, no question about it. You can also look at LSU's night record over there, their last 33 games. I think they're 32-1. I'm talking about in road games. That's a pretty impressive record when you talk about winning 32 of the last 33 night games on the road.
Well, Rodney, Nick Saban is big on focusing at, the present. One game at a time, always his mantra, but even the Alabama players will tell you that this LSU game has been in the back of their minds for a while.
To be honest, we all been looking forward to this game, but we know we had to get through the first couple guys first to get to them, and it's going to be a good game.
Everybody kind of pointed out that game as the game that everybody that they wanted to watch. We know everybody's going to be watching that game. But we've been looking at it. We've been watching film. But, we're going to be ready for them.
I know they're going to be saying LSU better, or they might say we better. But we can't buy into that. We got to play one play at a time, and you got to get ready for these boys.
You're hearing such analogies like it's the Super Bowl of college football, the game of the century, so forth and so on. Is it overhyped, or is all the build-up to the game justified, Rodney? I guess in the media age, with all the .coms that we've got out there now, you got to.
Oh man,
You got to fill the appetites, and everybody wants to talk about this.
Oh, this is unbelievable, Gary. Again, 1 versus 2, no question about it. I mean, I guess in some ways you remember 2 years ago, everybody talked about it from week 1, Alabama, Florida, SEC championship game, and it eventually became true. We know that Alabama's goal that season was to get there undefeated, Florida be undefeated, have another opportunity to beat Tim Tebow, You know, the dream came true. It was the dream matchup. This is kind of similar to that, Gary. We've talked about this all summer, that these two teams could come in, you know, 1, 2, or 3 in that category, both undefeated, and it's come to fruition. So, I mean, the hype, and then you've got the week off for both teams. So that's added hype.
And both teams had some pressure. I mean, they had to get to 8-0, both of them, to make the game this big. They've done that, so now, yeah, it's on.
And then you've got the angle that this is Nick Saban's old team. You still have that there, you know, and Les Miles still kind of trying to prove himself, so it's a big game. And I say prove himself. I certainly don't mean that he's got to prove himself as a coach.
Right.
But, I mean, you know, people out there talking.
Still compare the two, no
exactly.
doubt about it. Well, we know this much, Rodney, about the upcoming game. If the Crimson Tide plays like they did in the first half against Tennessee, well, they could be in some trouble against LSU. If you let the Bayou Bengals jump on you, you might not come back. Nick Saban did not hold back in his halftime speech on Saturday night during the Tennessee game.
Coach Saban got on our butts. I mean, that's all I can say, really. He jumped our butts about it and told us we had to come out. Our whole season depended on this game, and we had to get a W.
Well, a team that is outscoring its opponents by close to 33 points a game, it's hard to find too much fault. But, Rodney, if you want to find one with Alabama, they've only given up 55 points the entire season, but it seems like most of those have come in the first quarter, many of them on the opposing team's first possession.
Yep. They started sluggishly, obviously, against Florida, against Ole Miss. Then this week against Tennessee may have been the worst because it went the entire first half before they got rolling. But, again, I mean, what a dominant second half Alabama put together. And I tell you, great teams, Gary, are usually second-half teams.
Yeah. Well, you'd rather, if you're going to struggle in one half, I think you'd rather it be the first half because that means you're finishing the game out strong, and Alabama's doing that. Having said that, you know, they've been playing teams that, you know, these players are pretty smart guys. They put on the film. They look at the opposing team. They know they're better than Ole Miss. They know they're better than Tennessee. You know, you try to be prepared to play the game, but sometimes you're just maybe not at a motivational peak. Against LSU, that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, no, it shouldn't be. And you know, you talk about that, but again, you can look at history. You can look back to the 09 season when they had that they struggled there, you know, for a while. You know, they struggled with South Carolina. Of course, Alabama was a tired football team in that stretch. But at the same time, you know, you cannot be up every week. I mean, you cannot play at your ultimate level or your peak, you know, emotionally every week. And obviously, with that game looming out there, I think that certainly, you know, it affected Alabama against Tennessee to some degree.
Well, coming up, has the SEC found its 14th member? And if so, how will it affect Alabama? Plus,
Cousins on the last play of regulation, chucks it to the end zone. Caught! Michigan State's caught it!
And a wild and crazy night of college football last Saturday led to a BCS blow-up. So what's this mean for the loser of the Alabama-LSU game? We'll discuss that, and we'll get to your phone calls and email questions. You can call us at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at TITV@WVUATV.com. Rodney Orr and Gary Harris. This is Tider Insider TV, and we'll be right back. The Big 12 is hoping for the best but expecting the worst. 3 days ago, the Missouri Board of Curators gave Chancellor Brady Deaton the authority to move the school out of the Big 12. Monday, the conference board of directors expressed a strong desire for the Tigers to remain in the conference. However, today the Associated Press is reporting that the Big 12 has approved bringing in West Virginia to replace Missouri when and if the Tigers complete their expected move to the SEC. So, Rodney, barring something unforeseen, it now looks like, as you and I felt all along, that they would have a 14th team by next season, even though they said a plan was in place to play with 13. That would have been difficult. It looks like Missouri is going to come in and move to the SEC East. Texas A&M will come in and move to the SEC West. You'll have 7 in one division, 7 on the other. You'll keep all those traditional rivalries intact. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, you know, when you look at the overall, supposedly in the Big 12, you're going to see West Virginia going to the Big 12. You're going to see TCU going to the Big 12. And people have been very critical of the SEC as the loser in this deal. Mm-hmm. Now, I ask you, how is TCU and West Virginia necessarily better?
Well,
look, I grew up in Texas. I can assure you.
I think
that A&M is much more prestigious than TCU.
Oh, I know. I think the people that are making that argument are looking at the BCS and saying, well, TCU's been to 2 BCS bowls as a non-BCS member. West Virginia's been to 2 BCS bowls out of the Big East. I think Missouri's only been to 1. Of course, there was 1 year there with the Kansas State deal that Missouri probably should have gone. So that's probably the argument. I think Missouri's a more prestigious school
absolutely
than West Virginia. Having said that, I could see the argument that based on the way the SEC plays football, that West Virginia might be a better fit from just a fan standpoint.
But you could not say the SEC is a big loser.
No, no way.
In no way.
I would never buy that. And plus, television market-wise, the SEC isn't. I mean, in Missouri, you bring in St. Louis and the Kansas City markets, and in West Virginia,
what do you
Charleston,
bring in?
West Virginia, to be the biggest television market there. But it's always up for discussion. But that's the way it looks like it's going to play out. Missouri to the SEC, West Virginia to the Big 12. Well, you know what? The BCS, boy, it sure got shook up on this past Saturday night. And now, with all that's happening, could the Alabama-LSU loser wind up in the BCS championship game? It's a possibility. We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll have injury updates, and we'll get to your phone calls and emails, 205-348-9882, or you can email us at TITV@WVUATV.com. We'll be back right after this.